The morning bell rang across Lincoln High, its metallic clang echoing through the long hallways filled with laughter, chatter, and the rhythmic thuds of sneakers on polished floors. It was the start of a new semester, and the air buzzed with curiosity, especially about the new substitute teacher taking over sophomore history. Rumor had it he was young, quiet, and awkward. In a school where confidence was currency, that made him an easy target. His name was Mr. Daniel Reed. He walked into room 204 holding a worn-out briefcase, dressed in a faded shirt that had clearly seen better days. His tie was slightly crooked, and there was a small ink stain near his left cuff. He looked nervous, but his eyes, a calm shade of gray, carried something deeper. Something tired yet gentle. At the back of the classroom, 3 boys exchanged smirks. They were the self-proclaimed kings of Lincoln, Brad, Tanner, and Luke, athletes with perfect smiles and too much confidence for their own good. They were used to being admired, not corrected, and they had already decided this new teacher would be their entertainment for the week. As Daniel set down his papers, one of them muttered just loud enough for the class to hear, "Hey, look, the thrift store finally donated to our school." A wave of laughter rolled through the room. Daniel glanced up, smiled faintly, and continued organizing his notes. He didn't react, and that only fueled them more. Brad leaned back in his chair, tapping a pencil against his desk. "Yo, Mr. Reed, that shirt vintage or just poor?" Another burst of laughter. Daniel simply looked at him, calm and steady. "I guess that depends," he said softly. "Do you think kindness ever goes out of style?" The laughter faltered. For a moment, the class went quiet. But then Luke snorted, and the spell broke. "Whatever, man," Tanner mumbled, rolling his eyes. Daniel turned to the board and began the lesson, speaking gently, with a kind of patience the students weren't used to. He didn't demand silence. He earned it through how he spoke. His voice was soft but clear, telling stories from history as if he'd lived them himself. Within minutes, even a few of the louder students found themselves listening, except for the 3 boys, who were still whispering and planning their next stunt. When Daniel leaned over a student's desk to check her notes, Brad grinned and nudged Tanner. "Watch this." As Daniel straightened up, Brad hooked a finger under the edge of his old shirt and tugged sharply. The thin fabric tore at the shoulder with a loud rip. The class gasped. For a second, time froze. Daniel's face went pale as he looked down at the torn shirt. The laughter started again, louder this time, crueler. Even a few students who didn't want to laugh couldn't help but giggle nervously. "Aw man, didn't mean to. Guess that happens when your wardrobe's from the 1800s, Brad said, grinning. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't scold. He just stood there, one hand holding the torn fabric together. His eyes flicked toward the back of the room, where Brad sat with a mocking smile. And then, in a calm voice that silenced everyone, Daniel said, "Brad, could you step outside with me for a moment?" The room went silent. Brad's grin faded slightly. Why? Just a minute of your time," Daniel said, his tone neutral. The hallway was empty, echoing with the distant noise of other classrooms. Daniel stood there quietly, not angry, not humiliated, just calm. "You think I'm weak because I wear old clothes?" he asked softly. Brad shrugged, uncomfortable. "Man, it was just a joke." Daniel nodded. "You know, I used to think people who made fun of others were just joking too. But then I realized something. Sometimes people laugh the loudest when they're trying to hide pain." Brad frowned, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" Daniel looked at him with eyes that suddenly seemed far older than his years. "It means I see more than you think. You don't have to pretend all the time, Brad." Brad opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, the classroom doors swung open. The principal, Mr. Harris, stood there, his face tense. "Daniel, I need you to come with me." Confused murmurs filled the classroom as Daniel followed the principal down the hall. Brad exhaled, guilt creeping up his chest. 10 minutes later, a sudden announcement crackled through the intercom. "All students and staff, please gather in the gym immediately." Within minutes, the entire school filled the bleachers. On the stage stood Principal Harris, the superintendent, and a woman in military uniform, her presence sharp and commanding. "Students," Harris began, his voice solemn, "I want to introduce someone special today. This is Major Elizabeth Carter from the U.S. Army. She's here to recognize a member of our staff for an extraordinary act of bravery." Whispers rippled through the crowd. The major stepped forward. Before he was a teacher, Mr. Daniel Reed served as a combat medic in Afghanistan. 2 years ago, during an ambush, he saved 12 soldiers, while critically injured himself. He refused evacuation until every one of them was safe. The gym fell silent. Brad's heart dropped into his stomach. The major continued, "For his actions, Sergeant Reed was awarded the Silver Star, one of our nation's highest honors. Today, we honor him not for what he did in uniform, but for what he continues to do out of it. Serve others with humility, compassion, and courage." The gym erupted into applause, loud, raw, emotional. Some students stood, others wiped their eyes. Brad's hands shook. He glanced at Tanner and Luke, both pale, both staring at the man they had mocked. Daniel stepped onto the stage, wearing the same torn shirt. The crowd quieted as he approached the microphone. He didn't look angry or proud, just deeply human. "Thank you," he began softly. "But I'm not here for applause. I became a teacher because I believe what we do every day matters just as much as what we did once. Out there, I saw pain and loss, but I also saw people risking everything for each other. People who didn't care where you came from, what you wore, or how much money you had. They cared that you were human." He paused, scanning the students. His eyes lingered on the back row, where the 3 boys sat frozen. "If you want to know real strength," he said gently, "it's not about how loud you are. It's about how kind you can be when no one's watching." The gym was so quiet that even the hum of the lights felt deafening. When the assembly ended, students crowded around Daniel, shaking his hand, thanking him. But Brad didn't move. He couldn't. Shame burned in his chest, spreading like fire. Later that afternoon, Brad walked into the empty classroom where Daniel sat grading papers. The torn shirt still hung loosely at the shoulder. "Mr. Reed," Brad said quietly, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Daniel looked up. "It's okay, Brad." "No, it's not," Brad insisted. "You didn't deserve that. None of it. I was just being a jerk." Daniel smiled softly. "You made a mistake. What matters is what you do next." Brad swallowed hard. "I don't even know where to start." "Start by being the kind of person you wish others had been for you," Daniel said. "Everyone carries battles you can't see." Something in Brad's chest cracked open. Tears stung his eyes, but he didn't hide them. He nodded, then quietly left the room. From that day on, things changed at Lincoln High. Word spread fast, and the tone of the hallways shifted. The same boys who once laughed at others began standing up for them. Brad, once known for mocking anyone different, started tutoring younger students. Tanner joined the school's community outreach club. Luke, who had been struggling silently with his own family troubles, found the courage to open up to the counselor, something Daniel had gently encouraged. But perhaps the most powerful change wasn't what others saw. It was what happened inside each of them. Months later, at the end of the school year, Daniel packed his things into a small box. His time as a substitute had ended, and a permanent teacher was taking over. As he locked the classroom for the last time, he heard someone call his name. Brad stood at the door, holding a small wrapped package. "For you," he said, a shy smile on his face. Daniel opened it. Inside was a brand new dress shirt, simple, clean, and neatly folded. On the collar, someone had embroidered small words in careful stitching, "Kindness never goes out of style." Daniel looked up, eyes misty. "You didn't have to." "I know," Brad interrupted softly. "But I wanted to. You taught me more in one semester than anyone ever has." Daniel reached out and pulled him into a brief, firm hug. "Then maybe my job here's done." Brad stepped back, smiling through his tears. "You're the best teacher we ever had." As Daniel walked down the hallway one last time, the afternoon light spilled across the lockers, golden and warm. Students waved goodbye, some calling out, "Thank you," while others simply smiled. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of laughter, not the cruel kind from that first day, but the kind born from respect, gratitude, and hope. He looked back once, at the building where hearts had changed. Then he walked toward his car, slipping on the new shirt. It fit perfectly, not because of the size, but because of what it symbolized. He started the engine, glancing at the embroidered words one more time. Kindness never goes out of style. He smiled, whispering to himself, neither does forgiveness. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the man who had once been mocked for a torn shirt drove away, leaving behind not just lessons in history, but a legacy of humanity that would echo in those hallways for years to come.